is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello, welcome to Global Business Europe, live from CGTN in London. I'm Jamie Owen.
And I'm Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. Southern Europe in flames. Brutal wildfires continue to burn across Turkey, Greece and Italy.
Our other headlines: thousands protest in Lebanon 1 year after the deadly port explosion which claimed hundreds of lives.
The Belarusian sprinter who refused orders to fly home early from the Olympics has left Japan for Vienna.
And at the Games, Tokyo 2020 sees the teenagers take charge with gold, silver and bronze in women's skateboarding. Europe is grappling with a summer of extreme weather, from heavy flooding in the north to severe heat waves and fires in the Mediterranean region.
In Greece, wildfires have burned buildings and forced authorities to move people from their homes. Evangelos Ipsas reports.
Crews and volunteers continue to battle wildfires north of the Greek capital, Athens, for the second day in a row. Here in Varipopi, thousands were forced to flee as flames burned down their houses overnight, while temperatures continue to soar around 40 degrees Celsius, exacerbating the situation. The fire broke out on Tuesday around 20 kilometers north of Athens, forcing the evacuation of thousands of people, while others in nearby neighborhoods were advised to stay indoors. The blaze quickly spread to nearby areas, burning down farms, threatening livestock and properties. 500 firefighters, volunteers, trucks, and over a dozen planes and helicopters have been mobilized to try to bring the fire under control. The main highway connecting Athens to central and northern Greece remains closed. Authorities were able to evacuate the area and bring many to safety, while their properties and vehicles have been ravaged by the flames.
I have goosebumps just talking about it. All the homes around me burned, nothing's left. There were explosions all around. The utility poles were falling, there were explosions inside homes and cars. It was like we were in Hiroshima.
The Greek Prime Minister has visited the area to encourage the firefighters and volunteers and to see for himself the damage.
We will start immediately recording the damages. Houses will be rebuilt. With time, we will replant the forest. We still have difficult days ahead, with the continued heat wave and more high winds, so I encourage everyone to be vigilant.
Fire brigade officials warned that the blaze that broke out on Tuesday was the worst out of 81 wildfires recorded in the last 24 hours. Helped by lower winds and humidity overnight, firefighters were able to reduce 4 fire fronts to 1. But authorities are warning, due to high winds and high temperatures expected in the next few days, the situation could get worse. Evangelos Ipsas for CGTN, Athens, Greece.
Meanwhile, in Turkey, wildfires along the country's southern coast are burning for a 7th day. Flames came within a kilometre of a coal-fired power station north of Bodrum before winds changed direction. 8 people, including 2 firefighters, are now known to have died, while thousands have lost their homes. Well, CGTN's Louise Greenwood is monitoring events. So, Louise, what's the latest on the fires?
Well, at the last count, Robin, 7 significant fires were continuing across 5 different provinces along the Mediterranean and Aegean coasts. On the ground, police water cannons that are usually deployed during political protests in Turkey's big cities are being sent to the region. Now, the epicenter of the blazes is still around the town of Manavgat in Antalya. Local people have now almost fled completely, leaving their homes and their livestock behind. Trees have been felled to try and stop the blazes from spreading any further, but reports are from the scene that the scale of the flames has reached such intensity that they can only realistically be tackled now from the air. Spain has become the latest European nation to offer assistance. It sent 2 firefighting aircraft to Dalman Airport in Mula on Monday, along with a 3rd from Croatia. That's adding to the support that's already come from Russia, the Ukraine, Azerbaijan and Iran. Meanwhile, pictures from around some of Turkey's most popular resort towns, Marmaris and Bodrum, show complete devastation. The famous pine-forested hills around southern Anatolia now completely stripped of their greenery. And it is undoubtedly going to take years for this level of damage to be repaired.
So, Louise, what does this mean for Turkey's tourism industry?
Well, Turkey was already facing problems this summer, even before the wildfires broke out. Tourism contributes around 13% to the country's overall GDP. It's one of the biggest sources of hard currency inflows into the country. And because of the slump in the economy, the ruling AK party has been pinning much of its hopes for a recovery on the summer tourism season. But because of COVID restrictions, Turkey remains off-limits for holidaymakers from many parts of Europe, from the UK, from Scandinavia. Germany, France and Russia did ease their restrictions a little in June. But the scenes now show a fairly panicked response to the fires. Tourists, hotel staff, locals all being forced to flee by boat, in private car, in minibuses, hotels now closing for safety reasons. And in Turkey, anger is growing about the domestic response to all of this. Questions being asked over how a country with the second largest military force in NATO appears not to have had enough planes or ground support ready to help. Why offers of support from Greece and from Israel have apparently been turned down. Now, President Erdogan toured the region around Antalya earlier this week. He's pledged a $6 million recovery fund to help deal with the cleanup. But the leader of the main opposition Republican People's Party, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, has been busy on Twitter over all of this. He claims there is no government master plan in place to deal with this disaster and that Turkey is now in the midst of a climate and water crisis. And he's added that the amount of real estate construction in hotels and leisure complexes right along Anatolia's southern coast, seen under the AK administration, must now come to an end.
Louise Greenwood, thanks very much. Meanwhile, the heat waves around the world are being felt in the Arctic too. The latest data shows that Greenland's ice sheet melted at double its normal rate for 3 days last week. That's produced enough runoff to cover the whole of Florida in 2 inches of water. For the latest on the climate debate, go to europe.cgtn.com.
A year on from the Beirut explosion, efforts to find who's to blame for the tragedy have made little progress. The blast that ripped through the port of Beirut last August killed hundreds of people, injured thousands, and destroyed large sections of the capital. CGTN's correspondent Stephanie Freed spoke to families of the victims, still demanding answers.
After the explosion shockwave hit Myrna, she walked 3.5 kilometers to the nearest hospital with shards of glass protruding from her eye and bones jutting from one hand. Over the past year, she has undergone 5 surgeries. She personally paid for 4 of those procedures plus physical therapy, despite Lebanese government assurances they'd cover all blast victims' medical expenses.
I can't afford it anymore. I take loans from people to pay for treatment, then go for surgery, pay back the loan, take another loan, get another surgery, work, pay it.
Funding and government initiatives are also in short supply for rebuilding and repairing damage. NGOs fixing homes and schools mostly depend on private sector donations. With the passage of time and the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, donor fatigue has set in.
It's going to hit the 1-year mark since the explosion, so funding has decreased a lot. Yeah, but there's a lot of work to be done, of course. It doesn't stop.
Corrupt, inert leaders are sinking Lebanon into what the World Bank describes as possibly one of the top 3 most severe financial and economic crises seen worldwide since the 1800s. The new normal? Widespread shortages on everything from baby formula to medical supplies to petrol.
Half the amount I put in gets burnt up, waiting in line to refuel. There's nothing I can do about it. This is Lebanon. I've been in line for 45 minutes.
Leaked documents point to numerous Lebanese officials who knew and warned about the dangerous chemicals stored in Beirut's port before the blast. But according to international organizations, Lebanon's government is blocking investigations.
The state needs help. It's broken and run by a group of corrupt politicians. You want to talk about the state?
To break Lebanon's current paralysis, regional experts are advocating the IMF, donor countries, and expats set up funds and initiatives and a new government that represents the people be formed. Stephanie Freed, CGTN.
Well, on the first anniversary of that explosion, France is aiming to raise at least $350 million in humanitarian aid for Lebanon at a donors' conference that it's co-hosting with the United Nations. CGTN's correspondent Ross Cullen is following the story from Paris. Ross, what, if anything, do we expect to come out of this aid conference?
Hi, Jamie. But just to start with those latest pictures that we have been seeing in Lebanon, what's been taking place today, a major march through the capital, Beirut, followed by a minute's silence commemorating the more than 200 people who lost their lives. Also, the 7,000 people who were injured and 300,000 people who've lost their lives. So demonstrations in the centre of Beirut, not just commemorating the people who lost their lives, but also against the political inaction. This is something that Emmanuel Macron has tried to deal with. He was the first overseas leader to go to Beirut after the port explosion. He was there 48 hours after the blast to see for himself the devastation on the ground. He has hosted 3 different international aid conferences, including the one today. He said he'd hoped to get $350 million pledged in aid to Lebanon, but I've just received, Jamie, the final communique, which says they have managed to get $370 million in aid pledged by the different countries today, including Joe Biden. The US was taking part in this in this aid conference, which was jointly hosted by France and the United Nations. But Emmanuel Macron has been speaking during the day at this video online conference, but he was saying that this aid is destined for the Lebanese people. It is not to be propping up the Lebanese politicians. It is not a blank check that's been written for the Lebanese political system, and we can hear now a little bit more of what Emmanuel Macron had to say.
Forming a government, reaching the compromise needed, putting in place a roadmap of ideas. It's nearly been a year. This is why I repeat that the top priority remains this: forming a government in charge of the most urgent measures, in the service of the population, which will allow the international community to further support Lebanon.
We heard from Emmanuel Macron there. Lebanon doesn't have a government at the moment. The Prime Minister designate has been going to see the Lebanese president to try to form a government. But while this inertia continues at the top level, it is very hard to see how there is going to be action down on the ground, rebuilding the port where it needs to be. One of the other attendees at this conference was the Lebanese President Michel Aoun, and here is something, a little bit more of what he had to say.
There is no doubt that Lebanon needs every assistance and support from the international community after the determining needs and priorities, notably badly needed humanitarian, social and health assistance.
Ross, as you say, you described it as inertia and no government. What is happening on the political front in Lebanon?
Jamie, the political front was described in this communique as a crisis, not just a political crisis, but an economic and a financial crisis, one which the World Bank ranks as one of the top 3 worst crises it has seen in economic terms since 1850. This communique, released after the end of the video conference, also notes a humanitarian crisis underway in Lebanon. It really is catastrophic. We see real problems for people trying to access basic foodstuffs. Electricity could possibly be only on for 1 or 2 hours a day. You need to try to get a generator if you want to supplement and have more than 2 hours of power a day. Not everyone has access to a generator. The number of people living underneath the poverty line, that has increased. Money is locked away in banks that you can't get your hands on. Political impunity continues because nobody has been held responsible yet for the blast. There was a financial crisis already in effect before the coronavirus crisis exacerbated the situation. Now we have the crisis trying to deal with the aftermath of the Beirut blast. There's already geo-instability in that region. Libya borders Syria. Lebanon borders Syria. Lebanon also borders Israel, and we saw Israel and Palestine go to war earlier in the year. So there is a lot for the politicians to try to deal with, but they have not yet been able to form a government, which is the basic staple when it comes to trying to organise the whole reconstruction effort. The international community want to see a government in place, and that is a condition that Emmanuel Macron has said. He does want to see a government put in place as soon as possible in order that this aid can find its way to the Lebanese population and not to the politicians.
Ross, thank you. Ross Cullen there, our correspondent in Paris.
The Belarusian sprinter who sparked a diplomatic row at the Tokyo Games has left Japan. Earlier this week, Kristina Tsimanouskaya refused a team order to fly home, saying she was worried about her safety. She was granted a humanitarian visa by Poland. Our correspondent Penelope Liesch is following the story from Budapest. So, Penny, where is the athlete now and what are her plans for the future?
Well, Robin, Kristina Tsimanouskaya has arrived safely in Vienna in the last few hours. Austrian officials saying that she is safe and well, tired though, and understandably concerned about what comes next for her and the safety of her family. She's in the care of a Polish diplomatic team. It was expected that she would fly straight to Warsaw, but instead it's understood she will be going from Vienna to Warsaw later today, where there is a small crowd of supporters with Polish flags waiting for her, as well as the world's media. Now, that flight was expected to go straight into Poland from Japan, but at the last minute, Polish authorities changed their plans, boarding that flight to Vienna instead because of concerns about security and privacy on the flight. It all seems to have gone well up to this point, though. She has been granted that a humanitarian visa to Poland a few days ago after she alleged that she was taken to the airport in Japan and she was asked to board a flight home to Belarus after speaking out against the management of the Belarusian Olympic team. Now, her husband, we also understand today from Polish officials, has been granted a humanitarian visa as well after she spoke out about concerns for her safety if she was to be forced to return home to Belarus. So it is expected the two of them will be able to reunite in Poland before long.
And also, two leading Belarusian opposition figures are on trial today. What more can you tell us?
Well, Robin, this is protest organiser Maria Kolesnikova and opposition lawyer Maxim Zanik. Now, they are both on trial, as you say, today in Belarus. They've been detained since September last year when they were arrested and charged for indictment to endanger national security. There's been many people, thousands detained in Belarus last year over mass protests that broke out around the re-election of Alexander Lukashenko, the longtime leader who's been in power for almost 30 years now. Many Western governments believe his win in August last year was part of a rigged election, that landslide result. When people took to the streets to protest, though, it was very quickly cracked down upon with a strong police presence. And as I mentioned, thousands of people like these two opposition figures being detained. So they are on trial as of today. We saw Maria entering the courtroom, still behind bars, but putting on a brave face, showing a heart-shaped symbol with her hands that's become a sign of the protest movement. But both of these people on trial, if they are found guilty, they could face up to 12 years behind bars. Robin?
Penelope Liesch, thank you.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, amid increasing costs and rising coronavirus cases, the EU signs a new vaccine deal.
Search CGTN Europe wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe to the Agenda podcast. The Agenda with me, Stephen Cole, always gets to the heart of the story. Just subscribe today and listen now.
Covering the world from 4 continents. A new horizon. Teams in Beijing, Washington, D.C., Nairobi, and London. Who connect, interact, and inquire to bring you the stories that matter to all. The Link, only on CGTN. Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. As we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN. Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe.
And remember that CGTN is available to watch for free on all the major digital platforms, on Smart TV or online on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app.
The UK government is considering blocking Nvidia's $40 billion takeover of British-based chip designer ARM on national security grounds. The deal for Britain's most valuable technology business, which is owned by the Japanese firm SoftBank, was announced last September. However, a Competition and Markets Authority report has raised concerns about the merger.
Commerzbank has announced bigger than expected losses in its latest quarterly results. Germany's second largest lender lost $625 million in the 3 months to the end of June. Commerzbank has been hit by rising costs as it cuts 1 in 3 staff in a major restructuring exercise.
Toyota has posted a record quarterly operating profit after sales rebounded from the pandemic. The world's biggest automaker saw operating profits hit $9.15 billion. But despite positive earnings, Toyota has held off on raising its outlook for the coming year. Surging raw material prices and the global chip shortage remain a worry.
Chinese electric car maker Li Auto plans to raise up to $2 billion in a secondary listing of its shares in Hong Kong. Beijing's rival to Tesla already trades on the Nasdaq stock market in New York, raising more than $1 billion through its listing a year ago. The move comes as Chinese firms listed in the US face increasing scrutiny from Washington and Beijing.
Well, let's talk to our correspondent Sarah Walton in New York. Sarah, Li Auto, not the first Chinese company to be moving closer to home.
Yeah, you're right. We've seen in recent years Alibaba, NetEase, JD.com also gone for secondary listings. And, you know, you have to remember this is coming in context to what you just mentioned there, this increased scrutiny on Chinese firms listed in the US, which has actually had an impact on their share price here in the US in recent months. That scrutiny coming not just in China, but also here in the United States, where the Securities and Exchange Commission has said that it's stepping up supervision for Chinese firms that are listed here, but also calling for a greater level of disclosure from Chinese firms before they would be allowed to be listed in the US. Another issue perhaps coming into play here, analysts saying that you know, for an electric car startup like Li Auto, similar as it has been for NIO, another Chinese-based electric car maker, they just face a great deal of competition here in the US. Obviously from Tesla, the most well-established name in that sector, but also from traditional car makers as well.
Now, there are signs of volatility for Robinhood just less than a week after its stock market debut.
Yeah, you're right. The trading of Robinhood shares have been suspended several times this morning in the US because of a spike in the price. It was up at one point 81% for the day, 140% on the week. And you mentioned that lackluster start. It's a huge contrast from the first day of trading last week, where the share price actually fell slightly. Now, interestingly, Robinhood was still allowing its own users to buy shares in Robinhood on its own platform. And of course, that's interesting because earlier this year, Robinhood actually stepped in to stop its users buying so-called, you know, meme stocks, the GameStop, for example, when there was that social media chat room fueled buying craze for those. Some concern here in the US that Robinhood has itself become a meme stock, although analysts, not quite so quick to point the finger to that. They are actually saying that there's been some interest in Robinhood recently from some well-known, well-established investors, and that is in itself perhaps driving a wider demand for Robinhood shares. Markets more widely, though, not looking too great today in the US. The Dow was down 270 points. When last time I checked a few minutes ago. That actually mirrors some volatility we've been seeing each day this week, with rallies happening later on in the day. Overall, though, not a bad week so far for the markets. The S&P actually hitting its 40-second record high closing for the year on Tuesday. Some good earnings results driving that, particularly for companies dependent on a recovery of the economy post-pandemic. So Lyft, for example, its second quarter revenue came in at $765 million, $65 million more than expected. They were saying they benefited from the fact that in that second quarter, in the spring, lots of restrictions on travel brought in because of the pandemic were lifted. The company saying many people taking advantage of those fewer restrictions to use their cars. And Marriott as well, actually reporting net income of $422 million for the second quarter. It's saying that its occupancy rates went up massively in the springtime, particularly in its key markets. So it was up 56% in the US and Canada, and it was up 62% in the Greater China market.
Sarah, good to see you. Thanks for that. Sarah Walton there for us in New York. Hundreds of Australian soldiers are in Sydney to enforce COVID lockdown measures. Australia's largest city is in its 6th week of lockdown and struggling to contain a growing number of cases. Greg Navarro reports.
Their presence in a Sydney suburb underscores the seriousness of a COVID outbreak that shows no signs of letting up.
To go to such extreme measures and bring in the army to help enforce lockdowns is really worrying, and it's a sign that the state government has lost control.
The New South Wales Police Force says it's been stretched across several COVID operations. That includes ensuring thousands of people are complying with stay-at-home health orders. That's why it requested the help of about 300 Australian Defence Force personnel.
It could be dropping care packages off to houses. It could be helping contact tracers. There are a myriad of roles and responsibilities that Defence said they will assist us and New South Wales Health.
But some community leaders in Sydney's West are worried about the impact of having military personnel in multicultural neighbourhoods.
Our community, about 60% of them, they were born overseas. The majority of them come from war-torn countries, a lot of refugees, so their experience with the army is not necessarily a good one. In Australia, the army is more symbolic. It's there as a measure of national defence. We're not used to seeing them on the streets.
There are some people who actually believe the state's latest approach to the outbreak doesn't go far enough and is confusing. For example, masks are not mandatory outdoors where I am right now, but they are in other parts of the city.
Now is not the time for compromise, for balanced lockdowns, for thinking about the economy, freedoms versus the health advice. Now is the time to act strongly to eliminate the virus from the Sydney community. This is probably our last chance.
Yet some parts of the city, including Bondi, face fewer restrictions than suburbs in Sydney's west, which health officials say account for most of the cases. Most people in those COVID hotspots can't leave their homes except for essential reasons, and many are not able to work.
Already we're hearing large cases of heartbreaking stories. Steve, they've ruined our lives. We can no longer afford to pay our mortgage, our rent. We can't work out. We're now skipping meals because our residents are one of the poorest residents in New South Wales.
State authorities say Australian Defence Force personnel will assist in operations across Sydney for 6 weeks, but could remain longer if needed, with efforts to bring Sydney's outbreak under control. Greg Navarro, CGTN, Sydney.
The European Union has signed a deal with US provider Novavax for up to 200 million doses of its coronavirus vaccine. It's part of the EU's drive to diversify its vaccine portfolio. The deal comes days after it was leaked that the bloc was facing a price hike for Pfizer and Moderna jabs. Well, our correspondent Tony Waterman is in Brussels. So, Tony, the deal between the EU and Novavax is finally over the line.
Yeah, that's right, Robin. This is a deal that was 8 months in the making. The Commission announced in December that it was starting exploratory talks with Novavax. It was a bit delayed as the U.S. company had to establish a European supply chain and also nail down a delivery schedule. But today, agreeing to a deal which could see the bloc buying up to 200 million doses of its vaccine. The Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, called this another safeguard. This is a vaccine that in clinical trials has proven to be about 90% effective, even with variants in circulation, and is being tested against those variants already. The first doses of this vaccine could hit Europe's shores as soon as the fourth quarter of this year. But there is a slight catch here because Novavax has not been approved for use in the United States or here in Europe. It is under a rolling review at the European Medicines Agency, but it has not filed the official paperwork to get that final sign-off. And unlike the other contracts that we saw early on in this pandemic, member states are going to have the option to sell or donate these vaccines. And also, this is a protein-based vaccine. It's not mRNA. It's not a vector vaccine. So this will help further diversify the bloc's portfolio when it comes to these jabs.
And Tony, this comes as the EU has seen reported price hikes from other vaccine providers this week.
Yeah, that's right. There was a report in the Financial Times saying that Pfizer-BioNTech raised its prices by more than a quarter, that Moderna spiked their prices up a tenth from their original contract. So we're talking about $18.40 versus $23.13. That's for Pfizer, and for Moderna going from $22.60 to $25.50. This is all in U.S. dollars. So we can see quite a jump there. The Commission will not comment on the prices in these contracts. They consider it confidential information, even though it is European taxpayer money which are paying for these vaccine. But there are a number of reasons why these companies could have raised their prices. For one thing, Pfizer and Moderna have more bargaining power at this point. They have proven themselves to be very reliable, both in terms of efficacy and also delivery, because the bloc has struggled with delays from other providers, most notably, of course, AstraZeneca. Also, the competition is a bit weakened when it comes to these vaccines because Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, some member states are restricting the use of those jabs after it was found that there could be a link to a very rare blood clotting. This undermined public confidence, and those vaccines have, for the most part, in some places, been pushed to the sidelines. But the Commission spokesperson saying that price, not the only thing they're considering in these negotiations. Take a listen.
Of course, this is just one of the aspects that we are looking at when we are doing those negotiations with the companies. We also look at the production capacity, at the technology used, the delivery schedule, the experience gained from the previous deliveries that we have with these companies, and so on.
Well, as these rich nations are reinforcing their vaccine stockpiles, the head of the WHO this afternoon made an appeal to them, calling for there to be a moratorium on booster shots until at least the end of September. He said this would give an opportunity to low-income countries to play a bit of catch-up, and that the goal for the WHO is for 10% of the global population in all countries to be vaccinated with at least one shot by the end of September. Right now, in low-income countries, just about 1% of the population is vaccinated. That's compared to 50% in developed nations. And of course, this appeal coming as a number of countries, including Germany and the United Arab Emirates, are readying booster campaigns. And after 100,000 people in Israel have already received a third shot.
Thank you. Tony Waterman there in Brussels.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, kicking off a new era in Olympic sport, but one martial arts inclusion in the Games may not last long.
The EU's digital COVID certificate, which offers the promise of unlocking hassle-free travel around Europe this summer.
In less than 2 weeks' time, the Czech border will also open to all EU and Serbian citizens. 4.4 million Hungarians received their first dose of COVID vaccine.
18 and over can receive a COVID-19 vaccination, but it does come with conditions.
third wave will probably take longer to emerge. This vaccination centre is part of a massive effort to try and drive down the numbers of the new variant that was first identified in India.
On the agenda with me, Stephen Cole, we look up into space. We look down into data. We look at debt. We look at politics. We look at opioids, climate change. We look at all the issues that really matter around the world. But you matter too. We want to tell the stories you want to see and hear about. Make it your agenda.
We can try out the wild and crazy ideas.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time is coming. This idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we're trying to save the world.
Awesome!
We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
The agreement is signed. But what is the real deal now the UK has left the EU? For trade, for business, for the city, for ordinary people. Make sense of Brexit with CGTN. Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe with Jamie Owen and Robin Dwyer. Our top stories: southern Europe still in flames. Brutal wildfires continue to burn across Turkey, Greece and Italy.
Thousands protest in Lebanon 1 year after the deadly port explosion which claimed hundreds of lives.
The Belarusian sprinter who refused orders to fly home early from the Olympics has left Japan for Vienna.
China is now battling its worst coronavirus outbreak this year, fueled by the Delta variant, which has spread to more than 35 cities. The government has announced new measures to strengthen controls at airports and borders. Wu Guoshou reports from Beijing.
The latest COVID-19 wave in China reportedly began with airport workers in Nanjing, believed to have caught the virus while cleaning an inbound plane. In response, authorities say frontline workers employed in international services at airports, land and water ports, including sailors, will be separated from their families when they work.
They'll work proper shifts while living in designated places to create closed-loop management during the working period. There should be door-to-door transportation services between their working place and homes so they avoid contact with family and community members if on duty.
Authorities say China will not issue exit and entry documents, including ordinary passports for citizens whose travel needs are not necessary, but there are exceptions.
For applicants related to overseas study, employment and business activities, their requests will be accepted, verified and granted accordingly.
The official says China will strengthen joint work with bordering countries to prevent imported cases from illegal immigrants. International mail, especially cold chain products, will be closely checked and handled in areas separate from domestic ones. Wu Guoxiu, CGTN, Beijing.
China has rebutted criticism from the United States, Japan and other countries relating to human rights in Xinjiang and Hong Kong. The remarks were made as foreign ministers met at the 11th East Asia Summit. Wang said Hong Kong and Xinjiang are internal affairs of China, and the criticism violated the norms of international relations.
8 civilians have been killed and 20 others wounded after a militant attack on the home of Afghanistan's defense minister in Kabul. The attack took place near the heavily fortified Green Zone. Security forces reportedly killed the attackers while the minister and his family were unharmed. Taliban violence has surged across Afghanistan after the withdrawal of US troops.
3 rockets have been fired from Lebanon into Israeli territory, prompting retaliatory shelling. The rockets hit near the town of Kiryat Shmona, where air raid sirens sent residents into bomb shelters. The exchange of fire comes days after Israel joined other states in accusing Iran of being behind an attack on an Israeli-linked tanker off Oman. 2 crew members were killed in that attack.
3 people have died in the Czech Republic after a Munich to Prague express train ran through a stop sign and collided with a local commuter service. The crash happened 140 kilometres southwest of the capital, with both train drivers among the dead. 50 other passengers were injured. The incident is thought to have been caused by human error.
41 people have been killed when a truck carrying market workers collided with a passenger bus in Mali. The truck's driver reportedly lost control of the vehicle after a tyre burst. 33 people were injured.
There's been little movement at the top of the Tokyo Olympics medal table on day 12. China remains in the lead with 32 gold medals. The United States sits behind on 25. Great Britain has made it into the top 5 with 15 gold medals, tied with Australia and edging out the Russian Olympic Committee.
A 13-year-old has become Britain's youngest ever Olympic medalist, winning bronze in the skateboarding event. The silver was taken home by Japan's Kokona Hiraki, who is 6 weeks younger. John Matthews has the latest now from Tokyo.
Though China picked up no new golds on Wednesday, the women's and men's table tennis teams are both through to the finals after victories over Germany and the Republic of Korea. The women's team will face Japan, who have worked hard to make some headway in a sport largely dominated by China. The men's team will face Germany, who toppled Japan in a tight 3-2 match running late into the evening. Now, after a 13-year-old Japanese skateboarder medaled last week, the host nation once again has a new youngest medalist. 12-year-old Kokona Hiraki took silver in women's park skateboarding. Japan also nabbed the gold in that event. Now, Belarusian sprinter Kristina Tsimanouskaya is now safely out of Tokyo. Now, she is said to have arrived in Austria and is expected to travel to Poland, where she's been given a humanitarian visa after alleged threats by her delegation to do political dissent, and coaching criticism. We also now know that Simone Biles' aunt passed away during the Games, shedding some light on some of the behind-the-scenes difficulties she said she was facing when she dropped out of several events. Now, Simone came back to claim bronze in Tuesday's balance beam final. Now, COVID cases are still on the rise here in Tokyo. The city has reported a record 4,166 new cases for Wednesday. 90% of these are estimated to be from the Delta variant. Now, debates are also raging in the government as the ruling party's junior coalition partner calls for removal of a new policy recommending that hospitals admit only the most severe cases of COVID, effectively those requiring ventilators. The Prime Minister has refused the call. Hospitals continue to turn away patients as the strain continues to grow on the system. John Matthews, CGTN, Tokyo.
The Tokyo Games have seen the introduction of a host of new sports, from skateboarding to surfing. Karate will also make its debut on day 13, but as CGTN's Dan Williams reports, its Olympic presence may be short-lived.
The impressive Nippon Budokan was originally built for the 1964 Games as judo made its Olympic debut. It has since become the home of Japanese martial arts. The arena will now play host to another sport making an Olympic debut, karate. Tom Scott will line up for Team USA in the event, and the 2-time Pan American Games gold medal winner can't wait.
It's very exciting to be, of course, in Tokyo for karate's debut. I mean, it's the birthplace of karate, and so that's extra special, and this will now be my big chance to compete in that arena.
Karate officials around the world will hope that the Olympic spotlight will help boost interest in the sport. But karate may only have a small window of opportunity. It's already been dropped from Paris 2024. It means that there's more pressure on all involved to make the most of this chance.
We'll be on the front lines of campaigning to try and bring karate into LA 2028. And to try and get this sport back into karate after Paris. So, but yeah, right now, I mean, it's extremely special to be participating in this Olympic Games because there's no guarantee that karate would ever come back in.
Scott says the interest in karate has boomed in recent years following the popularity of the TV show Cobra Kai. but he hopes the Olympics can bring a shift in mindset around the sport.
Interesting thing about karate, no one starts karate because of the sport. This will be a very interesting opportunity where we will see, you know, karate, the sport side of it at the highlight, and I hope people will see that exposure, and maybe they'll be able to come give it a shot because of the sport and not just because of the confidence, discipline, and self-defense that we normally get people walking in through the door for.
Whatever happens at future Olympics, the stage is now set for karate to take a major step forward. Dan Williams, CGTN, Tokyo.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, a new face on Rome's world-famous traffic podium. The traffic officer setting a new direction for gender equality in Italy's police force.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Mari, what would you say is a good question?
Stephen, I'd say it's one where there's always more than one answer.
The Answers Project is a new podcast series from CGTN Europe. With me, Stephen Cole.
And me, Mari Beveridge. In each episode, we'll take a complex question.
And with the help of some of the world's foremost experts, shine light on some of the answers. So join us for The Answers Project.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe. New rules have come into force in China that aim to ease some of the privacy fears over facial recognition technology.
The measures follow rising concerns over privacy infringements among customers. CGTN's Sun Ye reports.
Cameras are being reined in across China under a judicial interpretation on the use of facial recognition by China's top court. Starting this month, collecting, using, storing, processing or transferring facial scans now all require explicit permission from the user. Doing otherwise will be deemed an infringement of their personal rights.
The rules have come as many cell phone applications now ask for our faces when firing up. Payments are often made through facial swipe, and as some neighborhoods have come to use facial recognition for entry, the technology that has made life increasingly convenient is also increasingly a source of concern.
Guo Bing, a law scholar and the person to file the country's very first lawsuit against the application of facial recognition technology, says the interpretation of the top court couldn't have come soon enough.
This interpretation is very timely, as it deals with one of the most high-risk areas of personal right protection. I think it will effectively curb the abuse of the technology and act as a guide on how to legally and compliantly use people's facial and other personal data.
Guo filed his lawsuit against a zoo in Hangzhou that made registration with facial technology mandatory for visitors with year-long passes. The new rules state that such behavior is now off limits. The interpretation also rules against making facial recognition technology mandatory to enter residential compounds. It says alternatives must be provided.
那么这次我们的司法解释在知情同意这个规则上面可以说是一个最大的亮点。
I think the biggest highlight for the interpretation is the lines it draws about informed consent. It's put out specific scenarios that apply. This means the law is specific about protecting personal and consumer rights, and it could send out a message that the use of facial recognition technology will be strictly monitored.
The interpretation comes as the Personal Information Protection Law, which is expected to be even more comprehensive, is under development. And the Vice President of China's Supreme People's Court, Yang Wanming, recently promised that close attention is being paid to the safeguarding of people's rights and personal information. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
Drones are being deployed to protect endangered forests, and they're doing much more than getting a bird's-eye view of the so-called lungs of the earth. Shini Samara reports.
Forests are often described as the lungs of the world, covering approximately 31% of the planet's surface. Sadly, this is rapidly shrinking, with an estimated area the size of Greece being destroyed every year. Monitoring the health of these forests plays a crucial role in protecting them, but the sheer scale presents challenges.
We are working on this project to create drones that can live in forests and sense environmental parameters that can then help in turn to protect the ecosystem, protect the environment. The data that is very important to collect includes humidity, temperature, light, movement, and the structure of the forest. So this can be done in different methods, and drones today are already used a lot for ecology and forest science. For example, they're used to fly above the forest and detect the different indexes that can give indications of how the forest develops and grows. But this data is often not enough to really validate the models, the climate models, the ecological models, and like this predict the changes in the forest.
The more detailed data is still collected by field researchers, a method which is expensive and sometimes dangerous.
Mostly it's done with, people walking around with measure tapes, for example, or climbing up the trees to place sensors and so on.
Drones could potentially collect data needed on a scale necessary to track environmental change.
So what is needed are methods that can detect parameters inside of the canopy, so in the dense foliage, close to the tree trunks, in the different levels of the forests. And for that, the technologies are really not existing sufficiently.
The drones gather data which helps them meet the challenges of a shifting environment, building a type of artificial intelligence.
How intelligent are these drones? I mean, could they take over by themselves?
When I think of intelligence, I refer to it as the lifelike intelligence. The goal of it is to create artificial animals that would really serve society, serve the world in a sustainable manner.
Professor Kovach's team is working on drones that can place sensors in the tree canopy. One of the ways they do this is by shooting darts into the tree bark.
The main task is to detect where it needs to shoot the sensors, so it uses some visual 3D mapping capability to do that. It can have an integrated control system that it can shoot those sensors with a certain level of precision.
Power to launch the sensor at a target 3 meters away comes simply from the energy stored in a coiled spring. The hope is the drones could soon deploy whole networks of sensors. The technology has potential in other areas too.
It's not only limited to forests, it's also sensing in urban environments around buildings. It's sensing for offshore infrastructure such as wind turbines, construction. The same technologies or similar technologies can be applied through a wide variety of impact sectors. And the forest ecology is one of them, but we work and are very active in all the others as well.
Robotics expert Professor Mirko from Imperial College London talking to CGTN Shini Samara.
Rome's world-famous traffic podium has a new officer in charge, and for the first time in a long time, it's a woman.
Her appointment marks a step towards gender equality in Italy's police force, as the iconic position is usually filled by a man. Hermione Kitson has the story.
Cristina Corbucci is rising to the challenge of taking centre stage at Italy's busiest piazza.
It's a figure that is much loved for both Romans and tourists alike because it's a symbol of the city. So to be chosen for this role is an honour and a pleasure.
The Piazza Venezia traffic officers have been made famous by movies such as Woody Allen's To Rome with Love and have always been considered a masculine figure.
We have a lot of women in local police, but here in Piazza Venezia, historically, we were only men.
But this 43-year-old political science graduate is changing the script, becoming the first woman in recent history to step onto the conductor's podium.
We have to do the gestures very slowly, a bit like an orchestra director, because the drivers have to be able to understand the indications. If we're not clear, we can cause an accident.
It's been reported that Cristina is the first woman ever to do so, but she's in fact following the path of Simonetta Fioriti, seen here standing on the iconic platform 40 years ago.
I think women can even be the better drivers, so why they cannot be the better instructors, so.
Her teacher, Officer Fabio Grillo, says her presence has been well received.
For her, the drivers smile. For us, they use swear words. This is the big difference.
They encourage me, they cheer me on, it's fun.
This is the only traffic podium of its kind in Europe, and to be eligible for the prestigious position, officers must pass a 3-month training program.
Cristina says the key to success is simple.
Study a lot, be serious, professional and prepared, and then you will earn the respect of colleagues and the public.
Her colleagues also hope more women will take her lead.
Yes, I prefer to work with Cristina than with Fabio. So do I. That's so.
Hermione Kitson, CGTN, Rome.
British vaccine developer Professor Sarah Gilbert is among a group of female pandemic fighters to be honoured with a Barbie doll. Gilbert led the team at Oxford University which developed the Oxford AstraZeneca jab. Professor Gilbert said she hopes the so-called role model Barbies will encourage girls to pursue science careers.
It's a very strange concept to have a Barbie doll created in my likeness. I hope it will be part of making it more normal for girls to think about careers in science, although to be honest, when I was a young girl, I never believed that I wouldn't have a career in science.
The headlines again. Southern Europe still in flames. Brutal wildfires continue to burn across Turkey, Greece and Italy.
Thousands protest in Lebanon 1 year after the deadly port explosion which claimed hundreds of lives.
And the Belarusian sprinter who refused orders to fly home early from the Olympics has left Japan for Vienna.
That's it for Global Business Europe. Thanks for watching.
More on all of our stories at europe.cgtn.com, and do follow CGTN Europe on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. We're on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion at cgtn.com and the CGTN app.
Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all the team here in London, goodbye.
Goodbye.